She just needed a place to stay, and I hadn't let anyone in for years. But one shared dinner, one late night talk, and everything started to change. I didn't expect love. I just didn't walk away from it either. Ryan Bennett wasn't a man of noise or many words. At 28, his life was neatly boxed, literally and emotionally. He liked his tools arranged in size order, his freezer filled with the identical meal preps, and his evenings quiet spent watching old movies no one else seemed to care about anymore. So when he heard a child's voice screaming, "Watch out!" followed by the unmistakable crack of something wooden slamming onto his porch railing, Ryan paused mid-sip of his coffee. He walked out to find a girl, maybe 10, with wild curls and untied shoelaces, standing sheepishly beside a toppled moving box and a dented railing. "Sorry, mister," she mumbled, eyes darting like a busted criminal. "It was heavy and I didn't mean to." Before Ryan could speak, another voice floated from next door. This one was warm, tired, and instantly magnetic. "Mia," the woman called. "I told you to wait for me." The girl flinched. "Sorry, Mom." And then Ryan saw her. She was carrying a small stack of boxes, keys between her lips, a phone wedged against her shoulder. She had that air about her, the beautiful kind of messy, dark jeans, paint-splattered, t-shirt hair, tied in a low, hurried bun, and eyes that didn't match her smile. They looked heavier. "Sorry about the chaos," she said, setting the boxes down and holding out a hand. "I'm Sophie. We just moved in. Well, technically, I'm crashing here for a while. My cousin owns the place." Ryan took her hand. "Ryan, porch casualty expert." She laughed. "Well, that's a new one." Mia perked up. "He's funny." Ryan raised a brow. "I try." That was how it began, with an apology, a laugh, a girl with no filter, and a woman with clearly too much on her plate. They disappeared back into the neighboring house, and Ryan figured that would be it. He wasn't the neighborly type. But the next night there was a knock on his door. He opened it to find Sophie holding a foil-covered dish and looking slightly embarrassed. "I accidentally made enough lasagna for 6, she said. "Figured I'd offer peace through pasta." Ryan stared for a beat too long. "I'm not hitting on you," she clarified, cheeks reddening, "unless you're into desperate, half-unpacked single moms who spill wine on their paperwork." He smiled just a little. "Come in." They ate on the couch, not because it was romantic, but because Ryan's dining table was covered in mail and unopened Amazon boxes. Sophie didn't comment on it. "Mia's with her dad this weekend," she said after a while. "First time she's slept over since we split. I keep expecting her to come crashing through the door." Ryan nodded slowly. "You doing okay with it?" She gave a half laugh. "Define okay." He didn't pry, but she kept talking. "It was toxic for a while, then it was quiet, and then it was done. Now I'm here with a 10-year-old, a broken blender, and a suitcase full of clothes that don't even fit who I am anymore." She looked down at her empty plate. "Sorry, I don't usually unload like that." "I don't usually have guests," Ryan replied. They looked at each other, and something passed between them, a shared loneliness, maybe a weird sense of safety. "You're weird," she said. "Takes one to know one." Over the next week, Ryan saw more of Sophie and Mia. The girl took a liking to his backyard swing. Sophie borrowed a screwdriver, then a hammer, then asked if she could bring over her Wi-Fi router because hers wasn't working. It became normal easy until one afternoon when Mia came over holding a drawing. "It's us," she said proudly. "You, me, and Mom in front of your house." Ryan looked at it, 3 stick figures, one with a big red heart drawn on his chest, the one labeled Mom. His throat tightened unexpectedly. "You're very artistic," he said quietly. "She says you're the nicest guy she's met in forever," Mia added casually. "I think she likes you." "Mia!" Sophie shouted from next door. "Stop interrogating Ryan." "Oops," the girl giggled, scampering off. That night, Sophie didn't show up, and Ryan missed it more than he cared to admit. The next evening, he found her sitting on the curb outside holding a glass of wine and staring at the street. He sat beside her, no questions asked. After a long silence, she whispered, "I used to think if I just held everything together, life wouldn't fall apart. But it still did." Ryan didn't speak. Instead, he reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a small keychain flashlight. "My dad gave me this when I left home at 18, he said. "Told me when it gets dark, you don't need to see everything, just enough to take the next step." Sophie looked at the flashlight, then at him. "That's either the most poetic thing I've heard or the most practical." He smiled. Maybe both. She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Thanks for being my porch light, she whispered. Ryan had never expected the simple act of fixing a fence to bring such complexity into his life, but that's exactly what Sophie Lane had become. Complexity wrapped in the scent of vanilla shampoo and the faintest trace of heartbreak. It had been 2 weeks since their first night sharing lasagna and quiet conversation. Since then, their rhythm had turned into something unspoken. He'd mow his lawn, she'd bring iced tea. Mia would draw comics of them as superheroes and leave them taped to his door. Ryan wasn't used to people just showing up, but he found himself leaving the porch light on just in case. Until Tuesday. Tuesday felt off the moment it began. The weather was humid, the air restless, and Sophie hadn't stopped Bob all day, not even for her borrowed hammer. Ryan tried not to notice. He sanded the side of a garden bench, checked the wiring in his garage, rearranged his toolbox twice. But by sunset, curiosity got the best of him. He walked to her porch, raised his hand to knock, only to hear her voice behind the door. No, Mom, I'm not coming back there because I'm not that person anymore. A pause. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. Another pause, then softer. Mia is fine. She loves it here. We both do. Ryan stepped back before the door opened. Sophie looked up startled. Oh, she said, eyes red. Hey. He lifted a brow. Everything okay? She tried to smile, failed. You ever have one of those days where the ghosts all show up at once? He nodded slowly. I live in that kind of house. That made her laugh through the exhaustion. Come on, she said. I made way too much pasta again. Dinner was quiet. Mia was out at a sleepover, and the silence in Sophie's living room felt heavier without her chatter filling it. She played music softly, a mix of Norah Jones and old Fleetwood Mac, and Ryan found himself watching Sophie more than he was eating. She was different tonight, still funny, still warm, but the armor was back on. Something had rattled her. Want to talk about it? He asked gently. Sophie sighed. That was my mom on the phone. She thinks I'm roosting my life by staying here instead of moving home to rebuild. But what she really means is, come back, play, nice pretend, none of it happened. She twisted her fork around her pasta absent-mindedly. I spent 10 years shrinking myself to make someone else feel big. I won't do it again. Ryan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached over and topped off her wine. You're not small, Sophie. She looked at him, then really looked, and maybe it was the wine or the candlelight, or the fact that no one had said something kind to her without wanting something in return, but her eyes welled up. Why are you so decent? She whispered. He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. Later that night, they sat on the back steps, the sky inky blue and full of crickets. Ryan was leaning back on his elbows. Sophie had her knees drawn to her chest. I used to write letters, she said suddenly, to my younger self. Corny right. He shook his head. What did you say? Usually something like, don't let anyone convince you that your softness is a weakness. She laughed bitterly. Too late. No, he said quietly, not too late. She turned to him. What about you? You always this good with broken things. Ryan stared up at the stars for a long beat. My dad left when I was 10. Took the good screwdriver, set with OM. Sophie blinked. That's oddly specific. It was chrome-plated, he said. I love that set, but it taught me something. She waited. You can't count on what stays, only what you build after. Sophie swallowed. Something inside her cracked at that, and before she could stop herself, she reached for his hand. It was calloused, warm, honest. They sat that way for a while, quiet still, hand in hand, until a porch light flicked on across the street and reality set back in. Sophie pulled away gently. I should... Yeah, Ryan stood. Yeah. She hesitated before going inside. You ever have one of those nights where you don't want to be alone, but you're too scared to say it? He nodded. All the time. She smiled softly. Good night, Ryan. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He stared at his ceiling, his mind replaying every glance, every laugh, every breathless pause between them. This wasn't what he expected. He'd been fine alone. He'd told himself that for years. But now he found himself hoping her leftovers never ran out. Ryan wasn't expecting company. Not that he ever was. It was Saturday late morning and he was half finished assembling a new TV stand. His living room scattered with tools, instruction sheets, and the inevitable screws that didn't seem to match anything. Just as he sat back to admire his questionable progress, he heard a knock next door. 3 knocks sharp and fast. It wasn't Sophie's usual knock when she came over to borrow sugar or ask for help lifting something. This was heavier urgent. He got up, curiosity edging out his usual hesitation. From his front window, he could just make out Sophie opening her door. Her body stiffened, visible even from behind. A man stood on her porch. Ryan couldn't see much. Dark jeans, fitted black jacket, slicked back hair, but the posture was familiar, confident, entitled. He didn't need to guess Greg Sophie's ex. The air inside Ryan's house felt instantly tighter. He looked away, not wanting to intrude, but he also didn't go far. 10 minutes passed, then 15. He kept pacing, then finally walked outside with the trash, taking a longer route past her house. That's when he heard them. "I told you not to come here like this," Sophie said, her voice tight but level. Greg's voice followed, smoother, practiced. "You didn't answer my text, Soph. What was I supposed to do? I miss Mia." "You missed Mia when you skipped her last 2 birthdays." Ryan slowed, still pretending to fuss with his trash bin. "I'm trying now," Greg said. "I've been working on myself. I even moved back here." "Moved where?" she asked. "Just across town. I figured maybe, I don't know, we could try again. Rebuild." Silence, then Greg said, "I miss you." "No," Sophie replied. Her voice didn't waver this time. Greg's tone shifted, defensive. "Is it because of that guy, that handyman dude you're always with? Come on, Sophie. You don't get to ask about my life anymore," she snapped. "Not after everything." There was another silence, then Ryan heard the screen door slam. A car engine started and faded. Ryan stayed outside a little longer than necessary, letting the wind chill his frustration. Then he went back in and stood at his kitchen window, watching as Sophie stepped onto her porch, arms folded. She stood there for a moment, then sank onto the top step and stared at the street. He watched her tuck a lock of hair behind her ear, lips pressed tight like she was holding back an entire ocean. He hated that he didn't know what to say. That evening, just after 8:30 p.m., there was a soft knock at his door. Ryan opened it to find Sophie standing there in leggings, an oversized hoodie, and her hair tied in a messy bun. She held a half-eaten pint of Ben & Jerry's and 2 spoons. "I figured ice cream and silence might be better than pretending I'm fine," she said. He stepped aside with a nod. "Come on in." They settled on the couch, no TV, no music, just 2 people and melting cherry Garcia. After a few minutes of quiet, Sophie sighed. "Sorry you had to hear that earlier." "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," Ryan said, "but I was taking out the trash and—" "It's okay," she interrupted. "Greg's always had great timing, hasn't he?" Ryan stayed quiet. "He doesn't get it," Sophie went on, voice a little thick. "He can't just show up and pretend like things didn't fall apart, that he didn't let them fall apart." She set the ice cream down on the coffee table and curled her knees under herself. "I thought I was over it," she said, staring down at her hands. "But seeing him today, hearing him talk like Mia and I are just placeholders for his redemption arc." She paused, blinking fast. "It made me angry and tired." Ryan looked at her, wanting to say the right thing, something helpful. Instead, he said what he meant. "You deserve better than that." Sophie met his gaze. "You always say things that make it hard to cry." He smiled. "I've been called worse." That got a small laugh from her, then softer. "You know what scared me the most?" "What?" "That part of me wanted to say yes, just because I'm tired of doing this alone. Raising Maya, fixing things, being the strong one." "You're allowed to be tired," Ryan said. "You've done a lot on your own. And now I'm sitting here, eating your ice cream and dumping my drama into your lap." "You brought the ice cream," he reminded her. "So technically, I'm just providing the couch." She laughed again, but it faded quickly into quiet. "You ever feel like you missed your shot?" she asked after a moment. Ryan blinked. "And what?" "Everything," she said. "Love, stability, the version of adulthood that actually looks like the movies." He thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, a lot." Sophie leaned her head back against the couch. "God, that's depressing." "Or relatable," Ryan offered. That earned another smile. "How is it that you've been single this long?" she teased. "Bad timing," he said. "Bad habits. and I've always been better at fixing other people's houses than figuring out my own. She looked at him for a long time, then she leaned over and placed her head gently on his shoulder. He didn't move, just breathed. The world outside stayed still for a little while, like time had carved out this moment just for them. And when Maya's bedroom light flicked off next door, they were still sitting like that, side by side, a little more seen than before. Ryan never woke up this light. It wasn't the kind of morning that hit like an alarm clock, jarring and loud. It was the kind that stirred you gently, like someone pulling back the curtains on a new part of your life. He blinked awake on the couch, a folded blanket over his legs. The living room was quiet except for the soft click of a mug against the kitchen counter. Sophie stood in the kitchenette barefoot in her hoodie, pouring coffee into two mismatched mugs like she'd done it 100 times. "Morning," she said without turning around. Ryan sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Did we—" Sophie looked over her shoulder, amused. "Fall asleep talking?" "Yes, nothing scandalous, I promise." "Good," he replied. "I'd hate to be the neighborhood gossip headline." She brought him the mug and sat on the opposite end of the couch. "You snore, by the way." "I do not." "You do, but like in an oddly comforting Labrador way." Ryan chuckled and took a sip. "I've been compared to worse animals." The moment hung warm between them, that delicate in-between space where silence didn't mean awkwardness. It meant comfort. "I should probably go before Mia wakes up and finds me missing," Sophie said eventually. "You can use the back door," he offered. Very spy movie. "Oh yeah, exactly what I want to teach my daughter, how to sneak home after spending the night next door." Ryan smirked. "She already thinks I'm the tool guy. You're safe." She stood, pulling her hoodie tighter. "Thanks for last night, Ryan." "Really?" He nodded. "Anytime." But before she reached the door, she turned. "Hey, I don't want to make things weird between us. That was nice, but if you need space—" "Sophie," he said gently, "I don't want space." Her eyes softened, like she wasn't used to people saying that and meaning it. "Okay," she said quietly, and then disappeared out the door. Later that afternoon, Ryan heard a knock again. Not Sophie this time. Mia, the 10-year-old, stood in his doorway with a folded flyer in hand. "Hi, my mom said you might help me with this." He took the paper community talent show. "I want to sing," she said, "but I'm too nervous to go on stage alone. Will you come watch?" Ryan blinked. "You want me to come to the show?" "No, I want you to come to the practice and the show. That way I can pretend you're the only one watching." He couldn't help but smile. "Deal. When's practice?" "Tomorrow. I'll knock." She ran off before he could say anything else, and just like that, Ryan realized something: he was starting to belong somewhere. That evening, Ryan and Sophie crossed paths again on their front porches. She was watering a dying potted plant. He was fixing the hinge on his mailbox that had been crooked since he moved in. "I saw your daughter sign me up for front row duty," he teased. Sophie groaned. "She thinks you're a human golden retriever. You realize that, right?" Ryan grinned. Ryan grinned. "Could be worse. She could think I'm Greg." The name changed the air between them. Sophie leaned against her porch railing. "He texted today, said he wants to try and be around more for Mia." Ryan kept his expression neutral. "And how do you feel about that?" She looked up at the ski, "Like I should let him try. Mia deserves that, but I also don't want her to get hurt." "Then set the boundaries," Ryan said. "Make it clear what's allowed and what isn't." "You give good advice," she murmured. "You ever think you missed your calling as a therapist?" "Less talking, more fixing," he joked. "I wouldn't last a day." Sophie walked over and stood a little closer than usual. "Ryan, I know things between us are new, but I'm glad it's you here now." He met her gaze. "Me too." Their hands brushed as they stood there, 2 porches apart, but something deeper slowly bridging the gap. And then Sophie said the most unexpected thing yet. "Mia asked if she could call you something besides tool guy." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "She said maybe Coach Ryan." Sophie paused. "Or almost stepdad." He laughed, unsure what to say. "She was joking," Sophie clarified. "Kind of." Ryan just smiled, the kind that wrapped around his chest and didn't let go. It was Mia's talent show night. The community center gymnasium had been turned into a makeshift theater with rows of folding chairs, a squeaky wooden stage, and a few streamers hanging by a thread. A table in the back held mismatched cookies and plastic cups of fruit punch. Ryan was there, early second row center, hands clasped nervous, like he was the one performing. Sophie arrived a few minutes later, wearing a deep green dress that made him stare for a second too long before he remembered to speak. "You look like I don't want to throw up," she grinned. "Stunning," he said, serious. "But yeah, that too." They sat together, knees brushing, and when Mia stepped on stage, her hands shaking the microphone way too tall, Ryan stood and adjusted it for her, gently whispering something that made her smile. Then she sang, not perfectly. She missed a few notes, but her voice, small and sweet, filled the room in a way that tugged on everyone's heart, especially Sophie's, especially Ryan's. When the song ended, Mia rushed off stage into her mom's arms. "I didn't mess up too bad, right?" "You were perfect," Sophie whispered, tears in her eyes. Ryan gave her a proud thumbs up. Rock star. Later, they stood outside in the chilly evening air. Mia had run off with her friends. Sophie leaned into Ryan's side without thinking. "She was so scared to do that," she murmured. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Ryan said. "It's singing anyway." She looked up at him. "Where do you come up with these?" "I don't know. I read shampoo bottles when I'm bored." Sophie laughed, a real deep laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then she grew quiet. "You've changed things, Ryan." He looked down at her. "What do you mean?" "I didn't expect any of this. I came here to hide to regroup. You made it feel like home again." He wrapped an arm around her. "I didn't do much." "Yes, you did. You stayed. You showed up every time. That means something." There was a pause. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't know how to be with someone again. I don't want to mess this up." Ryan nodded. "You won't. I'm not here for perfect Sophie. I'm here for real." She looked at him for a longing moment. Then she kissed him, not rushed, not hesitant, a kiss that felt like a decision. Weeks later, Ryan's porch was no longer quiet. It now had potted plants, Sophie's sidewalk chalk, Mia's, and a coffee cup with "Tool Guy" scribbled in black marker. Mia called for him from the yard. "Ryan, Mom says dinner's ready." "Be right there," he called back, setting down his tools. He was halfway through fixing the mailbox again. Sophie leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling. "We're eating in the backyard tonight." "Fancy," he said, grabbing the wine bottle she held out. "I figured it's warm and the grill's finally not broken thanks to you." Ryan followed her around the side of the house. String lights hung above a small patio table. Mia had set 3 places. They ate. They laughed. They bickered over how burnt the burgers were, and when the fireflies came out, Ryan found himself watching not the bugs, but the people in front of him. 2 people who had become his whole world without even trying. Later that night, as he stood on the porch watching Sophie tuck Mia into bed, he realized something. He hadn't just found a reason to stay home. He had found a home. Sophie joined him on the steps a few minutes later, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Want to know something funny?" she said. "Always. When I first saw you out here fixing your mailbox, I thought, great, another guy who will disappear when it gets hard." He looked at her. "What do you think now?" "I think you're the guy who stuck around when it got real." They sat in the silence together, comfortable, honest, soft. Sophie looked up at the stars and whispered, "So what do we do now?" Ryan reached for her hand. "We live, we mess up, we learn, we love." She leaned on his shoulder. "Deal." And there it was, not a perfect ending, but a real one. The story of Ryan, Sophie, and Mia offers a deeply moving lesson. Home is built not by perfection, but by the courage to stay and show up even when life feels broken. Ryan, a man who thrived in solitude, found his world transformed by letting Sophie and her daughter Mia into his quiet life. Sophie's resilience, carrying the weight of a painful past while rebuilding for her daughter, teaches us that strength lies in embracing vulnerability and daring to trust again. Mia's innocent drawings and fearless heart remind us that love can bridge even the widest gaps when we let it. Their journey shows that meaningful connections grow from small, consistent acts, sharing lasagna, fixing a mailbox, or cheering at a talent show. In a world that often demands flawless facades, this story urges us to cherish the messy, real moments that make us feel seen and valued. It's a call to open our doors, to be the porch light for someone else, and to find joy in the ordinary. Let Ryan and Sophie's story inspire you to hold space for those who matter and to build a home where love, not fear, writes the ending. What touched you most about this story? Has someone's quiet presence ever changed your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your heart. If this story warmed your soul, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join our community of storytellers. Your support fuels more tales of hope and connection. Let's keep building homes together.